1.30, the Devata said, having approached you, we ask a question of the slender hero with antelope calves, breedless, subsisting on little food, wandering alone like a lion or naga, without concern for sensual pleasures. How is one released from suffering? And the Buddha replied, 5 causes of sensual pleasure in the world, with mind declared to be the 6th. Having expunged desire here, one is thus released from suffering. It's the end of the sutta. So here the Devata, he described the Buddha as a hero with antelope calves. Antelope calves means the leg and the calf is very thin. You see the deer, they have very thin calves. Subsisting on little food, wandering alone like a lion or naga. Naga here refers to a big elephant or a big serpent. So he's asking the Buddha, he considers the Buddha a great hero. How do you say great hero? Ying Xiong in Chinese. Then he asks the Buddha, how is one released from suffering? So the Buddha says, we have to cut off desire for the 5 causes of sensual pleasure in the world. That means sights, sounds, smells, taste and touch. All these that give us pleasure in the world, we have to cut off desire for it. And also the mind. The mind also gives us the 6th type of pleasure. We cut off. Then only we can be released from suffering. Now the next sutta is 1.32. On one occasion, the Blessed One was dwelling at Savatthi in Jeta's Grove, Anathapindika's park. Then when the night had advanced, a number of Devatas belonging to the Satulapa host of stunning beauty, illuminating the entire Jeta's Grove, approached the Blessed One. Having approached, they paid homage to the Blessed One and stood to one side. Then one Devata, standing to one side, recited this verse in the presence of the Blessed One. Through stinginess and negligence, a gift is not given. One who knows, desiring merit, should surely give a gift. Now stop here for a moment. This Satulapa group of Devatas, according to the commentary, this word Satulapa Kayika means belonging to the extolling of the good group. These Devatas, they like to praise the doing of good deeds. So the first one said, through stinginess and negligence, a gift is not given. One who knows, desiring merit, should surely give a gift. So he's saying, we should do dana, offerings, charity. Then another Devata recited these verses in the presence of the Blessed One. That which the miser fears when he does not give is the very danger that comes to the non-giver. The thirst and hunger that the miser fears afflict that fool in this world and the next. Therefore, having removed stinginess, the conqueror of the stain should give a gift. Deeds of merit are the support for living beings when they arise in the other world. Stop here for a moment. Here this second Devata is saying, that which the miser fears when he does not give is the hunger and thirst. He thinks if he gives, then he will be hungry and will be thirsty, he does not have. But the Devata says, this is the very danger that comes back to him. Just because he does not give, in the next rebirth, he will experience hunger and thirst. Therefore, he should do dana. The conqueror of the stain is the stain of stinginess. Then he says, deeds of merit are the support for living beings when they arise in the other world. When we are reborn, our karma is the one that supports us. In fact, every day of our life, karma is supporting us. If we don't have sufficient karma right now, we will pass away and go down to the woeful pains of rebirth. It's just because our karma is still supporting us. That's why we continue to exist as human beings or as heavenly beings. Then another Devata recited these verses in the presence of the Blessed One. They do not die among the dead, who like fellow travelers on the road, provide though they have but a little. This is an ancient principle. Some provide from the little they have. Others who are affluent don't like to give. An offering given from what little one has is worth 1,000 times its value. So here the Devata is saying that some people, they have very little but they still give. Whereas others who are affluent or rich, they are stingy. But when a person has little and he gives, that is worth 1,000 times the value. What he's saying, the merit when you give, when you have little, is great. Whereas a person who is very rich, say a multi-millionaire, if he gives 1,000 ringgit, it's nothing to him. We Cantonese call sap soi. But for a person who is poor, maybe to take out $5 or so is difficult. If he can do that, then the merit will be greater. Then another Devata recited these verses in the presence of the Blessed One. The bad do not emulate the good, who give what is hard to give, and do deeds hard to do. The Dhamma of the good is hard to follow. Therefore, their destination after death differs for the good and the bad. The bad go to hell, the good are bound for heaven. So here he's saying, the bad do not emulate the good, the bad do not copy the good. The good people do what is hard to do. So they go to different destinations of rebirth, the good and the bad person. Then another Devata said to the Blessed One, "Which one, Blessed One, has spoken well?" And the Buddha said, "You have all spoken well in a way, but listen to me too. If one practices the Dhamma, though getting on by gleaning, if while one supports one's wife, one gives from the little one has, then 100,000 offerings of those who sacrifice 1,000 are not worth even a fraction of the gift of one like him." So here the Buddha says, if one practices the Dhamma and then every day has to beg for his food, gleaning is to collect food in small quantities. Sometimes like in India, people are poor, so when you go and beg for your food, you get very small amounts. This was meant by gleaning. And if while doing that, you still support your wife, and then you do charity, then your charity is much more meritorious than a person who gives 1,000, for example, $1,000, 100,000 times. This one, what does he mean by one who supports his wife and begs for his food and practices the Dhamma? Refers to the Brahmins. The Brahmins, the Brahmin caste, long time ago, they practiced the spiritual path. And even though they have a wife, they practice meditation and they support the wife. So if a person practices the spiritual path and does dana, even though he has little, then the merit is great. Then another Devata addressed the Blessed One in verse. Why does their sacrifice, vast and grand, not share the value of the righteous one's gift? Why are 100,000 offerings of those who sacrifice 1,000 not worth even a fraction of the gift of one like him? Then the Blessed One answered that Devata in verse. Since they give while settled in unrighteousness, having slain and killed, causing sorrow, their offering, tearful, fraught with violence, shares not the value of the righteous one's gift. That is why 100,000 offerings of those who sacrifice 1,000 are not worth even a fraction of the gift of one like him. So here the Buddha says, if a person is unrighteous, that means he kills and breaks the precepts, and then causes others to suffer, to cry, then even though he does a lot of charity, his merit is very little. Whereas the person who practices the spiritual path is a pure, virtuous person, then his merit, his charity does not harm others, his livelihood, his way of life does not harm others, then whatever good deed he does, it is much more meritorious. In some other suttas, the Buddha says, when somebody makes an offering, does charity, the merit of that offering depends on the person he gives to and also on the giver. So it is not always the merit depending on the recipient. If you give to a virtuous person who receives your gift, for example, you give to a virtuous monk, the merit is very great. But if you yourself, the giver, is virtuous, then it is much more meritorious. So in this case, the two persons who give, one is does a lot of unwholesome deeds, whereas the other one is virtuous, he does wholesome deeds. So the one who does wholesome deeds, his merit, the merit of the giver is much more. Now we come to the next sutta, 1.34. On one occasion, the Blessed One was dwelling at Savatthi in Jeta's Grove, Anathapindika's park. Then when the night had advanced, a number of Devatas belonging to the Satulapa host of stunning beauty, illuminating the entire Jeta's Grove, approached the Blessed One. Having approached, they paid homage to the Blessed One and stood to one side. Stop here for a moment. You see, quite often the sutta says that the Devatas are of stunning beauty. When you are reborn as a Deva or Devi, you are very beautiful and illuminating the entire Jeta's Grove. Their light is so powerful, it can shine. The whole monastery is lit up. And then when they paid homage to the Buddha, and then they stood to one side. This is the way of showing respect. Rather than sit down, they think they have to stand. It's more respectful. That's why Buddhist countries also, you have different traditions. For example, in Sri Lanka, it seems when lay people approach the monk, they pay respect, then they stand. It's like the Devas. Whereas in Thailand, standing is disrespectful. After paying respect to a monk, they have to sit lower than the monk. So different country, different custom. Then one Devata, standing to one side, recited this verse in the presence of the Blessed One. There are among humans no permanent sensual pleasures. Here there are just desirable things. When a person is bound to these, heedless in their midst, from death's realm he does not reach the state of no more coming back. One moment, I just explain a bit. Here is saying human sensual pleasures are not permanent. And if a human is bound to these sensual pleasures, then he does not get out of death's realm, samsara, the cycle of births and deaths. And another Devata said, misery is born of desire, suffering is born of desire. By the removal of desire, misery is removed. By the removal of misery, suffering is removed. Then the Buddha said, they are not sense pleasures, the world's pretty things. Man's sensuality is the intention of lust. The pretty things remain as they are in the world, but the wise remove the desire for them. One should discard anger, cast off conceit, transcend all the fetters. No sufferings torment one who has nothing, who does not adhere to name and form. He abandoned reckoning, did not assume conceit. He cut off craving here for name and form. Though Devas and humans search for him, here and beyond, in the heavens and all abodes, they do not find the one whose knots are cut, the one untroubled, free of longing. If Devas and humans have not seen the one thus, one moment, stop here. So here the Buddha is saying, the world's pretty things are not sense pleasures. Man's sensuality is the intention of lust. The pretty things remain as they are in the world, but the wise remove the desire for them. So here the Buddha is saying that pretty things in the world, desirable things in the world are not sense pleasures. It is our mind. It is our mind because of lust. Then we, when we indulge, we perceive sensual pleasures. So the thing is not that we have to get rid of the attractive things in the world. What we have to get rid of is the desire inside us, the unwholesome desire inside us. So there is a interesting case in the Vinaya books. When a monk, there was one monk at one time, he was very troubled by sensual desires. His lust was so strong, he was very agitated, and he was so agitated, he took the knife and cut off his private part. So when this news came to the Buddha said that, "Oh, foolish fellow, he cut off one thing then when he should cut off another." So he cut off the wrong thing. It is not the things in the world that are the problem. It is our mind that is the problem. That is why when we practice the holy path, we go back into our mind, go back to the source of all the problem is inside us. So somebody asks, if Devas and humans have not seen the one thus liberated here and beyond, are they to be praised who venerate him, the best of men, faring for the good of humans? And the Buddha said, those monks too become worthy of praise, who venerate him, the one thus liberated. But having known Dhamma and abandoned doubt, those monks become even surmounters of ties. So here, someone asked, maybe another Devata or a monk, those who venerate the enlightened one, are they to be praised? And then the Buddha said, if those monks, they venerate the enlightened being, then they also are worthy of praise. But if a monk understands Dhamma, abandons doubt, then they can even surmount ties. Ties here, Sangha, refers to lust, hatred, delusion, conceit and views. So if a person understands the Dhamma and practices, then he can cut off lust, hatred, delusion, conceit and views himself. At 1.35, on one occasion, the Blessed One was dwelling at Savatthi in Jeta's Grove, Anathapindika's park. Then when the night had advanced, a number of fault-finding Devatas of stunning beauty, illuminating the entire Jeta's Grove, approached the Blessed One and stood in the air. Then one Devata, standing in the air, recited this verse in the presence of the Blessed One. If one shows oneself in one way, while actually being otherwise, what one enjoys is obtained by theft, like the gains of a cheating gambler. Then another Devata said, one should speak as one would act. Don't speak as one wouldn't act. The wise clearly discern the person who does not practice what he preaches. Let's stop here for a moment. Here these Devatas are called fault-finding Devatas because they like to find fault with others. A lot of people are like that. I always look at other people's fault. Never look at their own fault. So here they are hinting that the Buddha, because they are talking to the Buddha, they are hinting that the Buddha, he says one thing and behaves in another way. They do not understand, even though they have psychic power, they did not understand that the Buddha was a holy person, an enlightened person. So they say if a person behaves in one way and show off himself in another way, what he enjoys is obtained by theft. What he means, if a monk begs for his food and does not behave properly, then he's like a cheat. He's not worthy of the alms food that he gets. And then the Buddha said, not by mere speech, nor solely by listening, can one advance on this firm path of practice, by which the wise ones, the meditators, are released from the bondage of Mara. Truly the wise do not pretend, for they have understood the way of the world. By final knowledge the wise are quenched, they have crossed over attachment to the world. Then those Devatas, having alighted on the earth, prostrated themselves with their heads at the Blessed One's feet and said to the Blessed One, A transgression overcame us, Venerable Sir, being so foolish, so stupid, so unskillful, that we imagined we could assail the Blessed One. Let the Blessed One pardon us for our transgression, seen as such, for the sake of restraint in the future. So when the Buddha told them plainly that he has crossed over the world to the other side, he does not pretend, then they realize that the Buddha was a holy person. Then they paid respect to the Buddha and asked for forgiveness. Then the sutta continues. Then the Blessed One displayed a smile. Those Devatas, finding fault to an even greater extent, then rose up into the air. One Devata recited this verse in the presence of the Blessed One. If one does not grant pardon to those who confess transgression, angry at heart, intent on hate, one strongly harbors enmity. Stop here for a moment. So, when the Buddha smiled, they misunderstood. They thought the Buddha was playing a fool with them, lying to them. So, they got even more angry. They flew up into the air, and one of them said these verses that if a person confesses and the other person does not pardon him, then he has a lot of hate or anger. And the Buddha said, if there was no transgression, if here there was no going astray, and if enmities were appeased, then one would be faultless here. And then the Devata said, for whom are there no transgressions? For whom is there no going astray? Who has not fallen into confusion? And who is the wise one, ever mindful? Stop here for a moment. So the Buddha here is saying, if there is no wrongdoing, and there is no hatred, then there is no fault here. And then this Devata said, who does not do anything wrong? And where can you find the wise one, ever mindful one? Then the Buddha said, the Tathagata, the enlightened one, full of compassion for all beings, for him there are no transgressions, for him there is no going astray. He has not fallen into confusion. He is the wise one, ever mindful. If one does not grant pardon to those who confess transgression, angry at heart, intent on hate, one strongly harbors enmity. In that enmity I do not delight, thus I pardon your transgression. So the Buddha is telling them that he is the enlightened one, and he is full of compassion, and does not do anything wrong, and that if somebody confesses, then we should pardon that person, and so there is no hatred, no anger. So the Buddha directly told them that he pardons their wrongdoing. Then they were satisfied. The next sutta, 1 point. Oh, so fast. Okay, now we continue. Now we continue Sutta 1.36. By the way, I forgot to mention, last night when I talked on the suttas, I did not skip any sutta. So I went through 19 suttas. But then I realized if I were to read every sutta, 3 months, it definitely cannot finish. 1 year also may not finish. So I think I have to be selective. Those that are not so interesting, I won't read. Or it's like a repetition, I won't read. So I will only read the more interesting suttas. Even that also is many, a lot. Of 2,000, how many we can read within 3 months, I don't know. But I think we have to try to finish within 3 months, because after the Vasa, I don't think there will be time and there will be people. So 1.36. On one occasion, the Blessed One was dwelling at Savatthi in Jeta's Grove, Anatta Pindika's park. Then when the night had advanced, a number of Devatas belonging to the Satulapa host of stunning beauty, illuminating the entire Jeta's Grove, approached the Blessed One. Having approached, they paid homage to the Blessed One and stood to one side. Then one Devata, standing to one side, recited this verse in the presence of the Blessed One. Faith is a person's partner. If lack of faith does not persist, fame and renown thereby come to him, and he goes to heaven on leaving the body. Then another Devata recited these verses in the presence of the Blessed One. One should discard anger, cast off conceit, transcend all the fetters. No ties torment one who has nothing, who does not adhere to name and form. You see these different devas, they say different things, and quite often you see sometimes they praise certain qualities, and it's quite likely they cultivated those qualities, and so they were born in heaven. And because of that, they were so happy that they cultivated those particular qualities, so they praise, encourage people to do the same thing. For example, the first one, he says faith is very important. So probably he had a lot of faith in the Buddha, Dhamma and Sangha, and so he was reborn in heaven. Another one says they should cut off anger. There are some they praise doing charity. Because of doing charity, they were born in heaven. Then the third one said, foolish people devoid of wisdom devote themselves to negligence, but the wise man guards diligence as his foremost treasure. Do not yield to negligence. Don't be intimate with sensual delight, for the diligent ones meditating attain supreme happiness. So here, this the third Deva's sayings are quite interesting. Foolish people devoid of wisdom devote themselves to negligence, but the wise man guards diligence as his foremost treasure. Diligence or energetic effort is very important. The Buddha says that we should always examine ourselves and strive to improve ourselves. If you are negligent, you are careless, and you don't improve yourself, you are wasting this human life. And if you waste your human life, at the end of life, you will regret terribly. A lot of people, sometimes we chase after worldly, material things in this world. And there is no need actually to be so ambitious, to have so much money and all that. The middle path is the best. If you are middle class of society, actually you should be the happiest persons in the world. There are some people, they have too much money, and all kinds of dangers come, kidnappings, robbery, etc. So, if a person is wise, then he is diligent to cultivate the spiritual path. Not necessarily to become a monk, even a lay person can practice the spiritual path as much as he or she can. And holy men like the Buddha and Jesus, they always dispraise or criticize people who don't make any effort. Like Jesus says that they are like dead men, and the Buddha also says they are a person who does not advance himself is as good as a corpse. Might as well die rather than continue to live. If you live another 20 years and you don't improve, you might as well die now. So instead of wasting all whatever blessings you have, the longer we live as human beings, the more of our blessings are used up. Because human being is one of the two happy destinations of rebirth, whereas the three woeful destinations of rebirth await those who are careless. The Buddha already warned that most people after death will be reborn as ghosts, animals, and in the hell realm. And if they go to those rebirths, it's because they deserve it. They never make any effort. What is hard to do, if it's worthwhile, then the Buddha says we should grit our teeth. Even when our tears come down our eyes or so, we should grit our teeth and bear and do it. Because it is worthwhile. For example, the Buddha says, even if you have very little of food and there's famine all around, most people will be stingy at that time. If their neighbor needs food, they want to keep it for themselves. But the Buddha says, if you know the result of giving, then even in those circumstances of famine, if you know that if you did that good deed, it will benefit you for so many lifetimes, and you won't go hungry. Then it's difficult to do, also you do. But because you don't see the result of that good deed, then most people are selfish. So in the same way, a lot of us, because of not making an effort, you see many people, their minds are not peaceful, their minds are not happy, they are always troubled. As a person who does puts effort, then you will always be happy. Just like a student puts a lot of effort to study, and then he gets all straight A's in his results. All the subjects he gets straight A's. Then he is very happy, and he deserves to be happy because he put in the effort. Whereas another student does not make any effort, and then when he fails, and then he has to do the lowest paid work, the hardest, the laborer's job. Then when he suffers, it's because he deserves it. In this world, we get exactly what we deserve. What we work for, we get. What we don't work for, we have to suffer for it. I think I'll stop here for tonight. Any questions? I told you, no?
Coming to challenge the Buddha rather than asking for why. Give their view and the Buddha.
Yeah.
That's normally what happens.
Yeah. You see, whenever we have power, influence, power and influence, then our ego becomes bigger. So even human beings also the same. When a person is poor, that person acts very humble. One day when the person becomes very rich, then his ego goes up many times. So in the same way, there are some devas, when they were human beings, probably they were virtuous, they did a lot of good deeds and all that. But after they become devas or devis, then because they are so powerful, and the ego makes them change. Let me tell you now. Because many of the devas, they have hatred, they have a lot of unwholesome qualities, because many of them are putujana, they are not Arya. If they are Arya, it's different. They may be very powerful in terms of psychic power and all that, but spiritually they may not be advanced. They are not Arya, as long as they are not Arya. If they are Arya, it's different. That's why when a person is spiritually advanced, say for example a person is an Arya, or a person is a real monk practicing the way out of samsara, then these devas who know, they will come and pay homage, they will come and pay respect. Yeah, I guess they can only read what the monk is thinking, but the actual depth of the mind, I think they cannot read. Oh yes, yeah. Yeah. Yes. In fact, there's one sutta. Once, some young men, they were from very rich families, so they were going on their horse carriage, And because being from a very rich family, there will be some, they wear white, their horse is white and they wear white and everything is white. And another one may be brown, got a brown horse and wear brown clothes and everything is everything is brown. Another one may be black and all that. So they came to see the Buddha. So the Buddha told his disciples, the Buddha said, you look carefully. If any of you has not seen the Devas of the 33, you look at them, they look exactly like the Devas of the 33. So actually we human beings, there are some of us, we have a lot of merit. Some of us come from the heavenly realm, and we are going back to the heavenly realm. So you don't have to look very far. So if you know how to behave yourself, you are already a Deva or a Devi inside. We are not very much different. Humans, those of us who have merit, we have blessings, we are actually in a very happy world. Because not all Devas are happy, there are some who are born low, like the Naga and the Yaka and all that. They have to kill to cari makan, to get their food. Like the mountain spirits, the river spirits, the snake spirits, the bird spirits, Garuda, etc. They have to kill. So we are not so much different from them. Different level of heaven also different. Those low devas, they will eat flesh. That's why sometimes some people, they are careless, they wander into the forest and the jungle alone. After that they are lost. I know of somebody who told me, the relative just moved into the new housing estate, Perak. And then they started walking up the hills. And the husband and wife and the daughter, about 10-year-old daughter, walking in front. Actually, it's a new housing estate and it's a new area, and the hills, seldom people go. So this couple went with the daughter, and then after some time the daughter disappeared. And they searched and searched, they could not find the daughter. And they made a police report, and many hours later the daughter was found quite a long distance away, over 2 hills, and found dead. And it seems the person who found her heard something dropping on the ground, pop. Then went to see, saw this small girl like dropped from heaven like that. So it verifies actually what the Buddha said, because sometimes the Buddha meets some fierce devas and they give him a warning. The deva tells the Buddha that he can make him mad, or he can pluck the heart from his body out, or he can catch him by the leg and throw him over the hill. So this is the third case of what happened to that small girl. Got thrown over the hill, over 2 hills, landed the other side dead. So people, their karma is not very good, they have to be extremely careful. If your karma is very good, you go to such places, you'll be protected by other devas. These things rarely happen, that's why a lot of people don't know about them. Sometimes you read these things in the suttas, you may not believe also, until it happens. Huh?
That's why the Buddha tries to young monks, right? Because of the smell or things like that.
That's one of the reasons. Another reason, if you want to progress in your meditation, you got to have very good sila. Your karma must be very good. Sometimes unwholesome karma is not only from doing unwholesome action, sometimes it is neglect. in doing what you should do. Sometimes many of us, we have certain responsibilities and we don't carry out our responsibilities well enough. We are careless. Think I couldn't be bothered. So this kind of thing, small things, prick our conscience. Prick our conscience. So when they prick our conscience, then we are troubled by it. When you are troubled by these things that give you remorse, then your mind is not happy. So when you meditate, you can never calm down. Just a few days ago when the bus came, one lady came to ask me, she said she promised to do something few years ago, but she did not do it. And up to today, she is very disturbed by the fact that she promised to do something and she did not do. But she wouldn't tell me what it is. So you see, these kind of things. Sometimes we fail to do what we should do. Then it haunts us even up to our deathbed. When we are dying also, we are troubled. If you are troubled by it when you die, then it's no good. It will bring you to a bad rebirth because your mind is disturbed. So always be very careful about karmas. Always examine ourselves. Examine our 3 karmas. Whether we are thinking properly or not. Whether we are speaking properly or not. Whether we are acting properly or not. The Buddha said, what you are about to do, you reflect on it. Whether it will harm you or harm others. And what you have already done also, you should reflect on it. And what you are going to do, the 3 karmas, past, present and future, always reflect on it. And then improve our karmas.